I'm Alex Guns, the fund manager of the Heptagon Future Trends Fund, and I'm here today to talk about the digital water opportunity. I think there's actually nothing more important in the world than water. Think about it like this: all of human life really depends on water. Now, the quite remarkable thing is that if you think about the world, we often refer to Earth as being the blue planet. As everyone knows, about 80% of the planet does comprise water. However, the really scary thing is that of that percentage that's water, very little of it is actually usable. 97.5% is salty. You have 1 to 2% that's frozen in ice or permafrost, which means that all of human life, all of global GDP, really depends on 1% of all available water in the world. This is the crux of the problem, that we know demand for water is going up at the same time that supply of water is coming down. In terms of the demand-supply imbalance, I think it's really quite simple. The best way perhaps of characterizing this is that water consumption has gone up sixfold roughly in the last century. And if you think about what's really been driving that, it's been a function of population growth, it's been a function of urbanization, it's been a function of increasing disposable incomes, and all of that generally means greater water usage. If you work on the assumption that population growth is going to keep expanding, we probably peak out globally within the next 50 years or so, more people are going to continue to move to cities, more people are going to move up the income curve. I think that points very clearly to what's happening on the demand side of the equation. As far as the supply side of the equation is concerned, given what's going on with global warming at the moment, you've really got huge amounts of water stress within the system. If you take data from the United Nations, I believe the figure is about 1/3 of all people on this planet actually suffer from water stress at the moment. In other words, they lack available access to water. I think when it comes to the solution, it ought to be very clear. The demand side is the wrong place to be looking. If you think about it, it's almost impossible to limit, restrict, or change people's demand behavior. So it's all about really trying to think about ways of improving the supply side and making the supply or the distribution of water much more efficient. I guess the way perhaps to frame this or to think about this debate is really perhaps to share another useful statistic with people, that is, for every dollar that is invested within the water system, so most forecasters believe, it can actually yield something in the order of a $4 return simply through making things more efficient. This is an issue not just in emerging economies where perhaps water infrastructure is less developed, but also in developed economies as well. If you take the US, for example, the old infrastructure there that hasn't been upgraded for a while, hasn't been updated, you're seeing a huge number of leaks every day, and the figure that springs to my mind is something in the order of 6 billion gallons of water lost every day in the US through leakages and other inefficiencies. The key solution to our mind is improving the efficiency of water distribution. Well, this is where we get really excited. I think technology is really, as we've said, for so many other industries, so many other future trends that we discuss, one has to think about technology within the water sector as being an enabler. Really, the direction of travel in which I think we're going with technology is where you're creating effectively a full suite of data products and analytics, and this can be everything from monitoring through to smart contracts. And really, once it's not just putting these sort of elements in place, but it's also actually taking the data insights, analyzing them, and then moving to better outcomes. Lots of examples of where water tech is being deployed at the moment. I think to call out a few that really spring to mind, there's a very prominent case with London's Heathrow Airport where they've actually started putting in water technology to analyse the efficiency of their pumping systems, and the figure that they've shared publicly is something in the order of 50% less water being used now than in the past. If we jump over to Australia, the Water Authority in Melbourne has, for example, started deploying smart analytics within its water network. They're talking about savings in the order of cost savings, that is, in the order of 20 to 25%. And then probably the third example that springs to mind off the top of my head would be in the United States, the Eastern municipal water district recently published a case study where they said actually having predictive maintenance tools embedded within their water network, particularly during a period like the pandemic, was actually incredibly helpful, and that about 50% less labour was used than in the past, and then that cost saving could be redeployed elsewhere within the water system. I think I'd characterise two limitations with regard to water tech. Number one would be we should not think of water tech as being a panacea, i.e. being a single or sole solution for solving the problems the water industry faces. I would perhaps argue it sits alongside a number of other things, such as thinking about better irrigation systems, thinking about better education, thinking about desalination, and clearly one size will not fit all. The second dynamic I'd call out is probably just the sort of structural intransigence, if you will, of many actors within the water sector. That there's certainly a school of thought that this should be an issue that's being solved or addressed by the government rather than, say, by the private sector. Even if you do move into the private sector, certainly anecdotally, and when we were doing the work that really fed into this piece, many of the discussions we had with water businesses or large industry players was that they don't even have a dedicated chief technology officer at the moment. So getting cultural buy-in, if you will, to implement water tech solutions can perhaps be a challenge. I guess the other factors I'd call out would be interoperability. In other words, can one ensure that a certain set of software tools will sit perhaps with other software tools in any given network? And then clearly, as with any technology, a concern about cybersecurity might also be relevant. I think water has been a very hot space within the world of investing for quite some time, and certainly if you were to look at the amount of interest and activity, say from private equity players, from large infrastructure funds, and that really speaks to the demand. From the perspective of the equity market and listed public companies, there is, however, something of a greater challenge. When we look at the water space, it's very hard to identify pure play or meaningful pure play companies that benefit directly from this theme. You've obviously got some water businesses that operate in dedicated niches. A company like, say, Carita Water is very strong within filtration systems. You've got other businesses that are great companies like Thermo Fisher that play within one part of their business gives exposure to the water sector, such as advanced instrumentation and analytics, but it's only a very small part of what the broader company does. So when you're actually narrowing that funnel, if you will, and looking at dedicated or clear pure play water companies, the list is actually quite small. If I were to call out a few names, then maybe Mueller Water Products, Pentair, Tetra Tech, Xylem, all US listed, could be of potential interest. But I think given the excitement in the space, the opportunity ahead, it's something that we're going to clearly monitor, and we'd expect the number of businesses only to grow going forward. So thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our thoughts about water. We're incredibly excited about the opportunity within this space. I'd urge everyone to take a read of the piece that's available on Heptagon Capital's website, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out either to me directly or to any of my colleagues at Heptagon Capital. Thanks again.